Before we begin, thank you very much to Great Green Gobs of Greasy Grimy Galvatron Guts for joining the Patreon campaign. I hope that gave that the proper emphasis you were hoping for. It's a very interesting shout out. Thank you very much for the support and the contribution to the Patreon campaign. If you haven't used it in a long while, a quick reminder, I do have a link with Entertainment Earth that if you use below does help the channel when you pre-order the latest stuff coming for Transformers. But if it's something that's in stock, it's also going to get you 10% off of that. If that doesn't work, then I think the code is TJOmega sales, all one word. I don't know why that's the code, but it is. Either way, yeah, helps out the channel or gets you a discount, one or the other, or both. Thank you for doing it. So, that quick plug out of the way, let's discuss. You are looking at a big list of Japanese words that some of you might be able to read, but most of you probably cannot. This was a survey that Takara put out in September of 2022, and this was them asking fans, what Masterpiece toys would you like to see in the future? So, it seems weird to actually discuss a poll that Takara ran a year and a half ago, but I actually think it's more interesting to look at now because Masterpiece is in a particularly odd state. We know for the last year and plus some time, they've been focusing on the Masterpiece Gatai line, and the standard Masterpiece has kind of taken a backstage role of sorts, or backseat role, rather. You have 2022 and 2023, where only one new toy was released in the Masterpiece line, and both years only 3 toys total, including the retools. It's really thin for a line that used to do 8 figures a year. So we've taken a lot of attention away from the main Masterpiece, which has slowed it down considerably. But before that slowdown happened, or while it happened rather, Takara put out this survey to find out what exactly fans want to see next from it. And I think it's fascinating. It came up again into my awareness because somebody pointed out that out of this entire long list of names, only one has actually gotten a Masterpiece toy, and that was Hoist. And the thing is, at this stage, September 2022, Trailbreaker was announced. It was just a few months from release, so it was a given that we were going to get Hoist. So really, everything out of the list that is hypothetical after that has been completely overlooked, and it's kind of strange why. But the list of names is actually kind of interesting, so I think it's worth diving into just to see what's taking so long. It starts with Cliffjumper, who we've seen the prototype of, unless that really did turn out to be like a really well done knockoff based on Bumblebee, which is entirely possible. At this point, if it was that far into development, I assumed Takara would release it unless there's some kind of trouble with getting the license for his vehicle mode. We've seen that before, where toys get to the prototype stage only to find out they can't legally use the vehicle. That's what happened to the original design for Alternator's Jazz. It's a weird choice, though. It's weird that even any minibot, this is the only minibot on the entire list, and you would think that with Masterpiece kind of being careful about who it releases next in the main line, they'd do more minibots that are easier, cheaper to do, and a little bit safer. But it's weird to me because this one should have happened a long time ago. Other year 1 characters that we still do not have, Mirage is on the list. Again, I have to assume it's a licensing thing with the vehicle mode, because otherwise, yeah, I think just for the sheer variety it would add to the Masterpiece line, this should be a shoo-in for some kind of inclusion. And then there's Jazz, who we've been after for years, but Porsche was always the problem. Well, Porsche is on board with the Transformer brand now. The Rise of the Beast movie and all the Mirages in that toy line kind of prove that. So it would be great to actually get a modern Jazz now if Porsche can actually give up the license on an older model. The other one that came up in this list that I'm shocked we have not seen yet, Reflector. Where is my boy Reflector? This one is confusing in its absence to me, not only because they are characters featured in the first year of the cartoon. They are the Decepticon grunt cast on Earth, so they make a appearance in just about every fight in season 1. I'm shocked we haven't seen them in masterpiece form because, one, troop builder. You'd have collectors getting tons of these just to have like armies of clones. And then you have what you see on screen, which are very easy to do retools into toy accurate versions. So you've got masterpiece toys you can use more than once, and the collectors are going to buy more than one of at a time. Seems like a shoe-in to me. Not sure why they haven't done it. If we move into year 2 characters, the list gets even more interesting because it shows Takara's willingness to do certain things I didn't think they'd touch from Masterpiece. Let's take a look at Perceptor, for instance. Now, this one does have some notoriety. It's, one of Takara's main designers. It's, his favorite figure in particular, and it's not a bad G1 toy. Very prominent character. Doing it in Masterpiece would be weird. Do you make him a more realistic microscope? Do you improve the tank mode to look more like a tank? What would you do with a Masterpiece Perceptor? It actually is kind of genuinely confusing how to approach that one. I'm like genuinely curious how they would do it. But again, between Toy Accurate Release and Magnificus, you'd think they get plenty of reuses out of the mold if they actually did it. Here's 3 names on the list that were surprising for more than one reason. We had Slag, okay, so Dinobots, obviously. We have Snarl, we have Swoop, and that's it. Sludge was not on the list. I don't know if Brontosauruses just aren't popular dinosaurs in Japan, or if they're going like, well, they don't, maybe they exist, maybe they don't. Jury is always out on that one. Maybe we don't want to do like a, I don't know. Like, I don't think paleontology actually factors into this. I think they just I think they just end up saving it for last more than anything. So it's kind of weird that only 3 of the Dinobots made the list. I really do think if they're going to do more Dinobots, Grimlock absolutely needs a 2.0. Aside from the fact the current one doesn't match the more cartoon-directed aesthetic of modern Masterpiece toys, it always felt like kind of a janky figure. I mean, maybe it was the US release I had. Maybe the Takara version was a lot more solid, but when I had the toy and I handled it, I really didn't like how it felt. I didn't like the head turning gimmick that was geared all the way up its back. I felt like that made it really rickety, way more than it should have been. I just feel like they should do a much more solid job on a brand new Grimlock before they introduce new Dinobots to the Masterpiece line that would inevitably match the current aesthetic, not the original aesthetic that Grimlock originally shot for. That's why it was interesting. And then, yeah, pour one out for Sludge, who's probably going to take a long time if they even go this route. Blaster's another one on this list that's super confusing, and this one because he has a cassette in Masterpiece. A Steeljaw mold actually does exist in Masterpiece colors, or in the Masterpiece scale, in Masterpiece style. They did it for his Decepticon repaint, though, and I have no idea why. It's the weirdest choice I've seen them make. So we have a Masterpiece Night Prowler, but we do not have a Masterpiece Steeljaw because that would inevitably come with a Masterpiece Blaster, which still hasn't happened, and I have no idea why. I mean, it's an invitation to print money, just like making his cassettes as separate pieces again, right? So, fingers crossed. That seems like a very easy one to do. Seems like a very obvious one. Then we get to the name I really wanted to see, and here's where surprises start happening a little bit more. One of the names on the list is Blitzwing. Now, of course, I would love a Masterpiece Blitzwing, but this raises a whole new slew of questions. So, triple changers, like, I've seen, like, triple changing figures in third party. I have yet to see one that manages to pull off 2 realistic vehicle modes without having an incredibly complex and, for me, frankly, a not so fun transformation experience. You know, I stare at all these third-party Blitzwings. I'm like, I don't want to have to remember all these little tabs and panels I have to fold together just to make sure everything lines up smoothly. It feels like it's going to be like a frustrating fiddle toy. It's going to be hard to remember how to transform. That's not fun for me. And that seems to be most of the Masterpiece triple changers that I'm looking at. I could be wrong. Yeah, and I'm not talking pocket scale. Obviously, those wouldn't be nearly as complex. I'm talking masterpiece scale. Like, I look at the Star Toys Blitzwing and I drool over it, but sometimes that transformation seems a little bit much. A lot of the Astro Trains, I see the exact same thing. Point being, I'm sure Takara could do it. I don't think they would put it on the list if they weren't willing or capable of doing it, but it does seem like a stretch, you know, like masterpieces can already get ludicrously expensive as it is, you know, over $200 for a 2.0 Seeker or 3.0 Convoy without his trailer. How much do you think like a Blitzwing would be with all the parts required for his alt modes and a good-looking robot mode? That's going to be a pricey figure. That is absolutely going to be yeah, let me look at third party. Maybe that Star Toys Blitzwing isn't such a bad option after all. That's not the only triple changer on here. Sandstorm is on the list, and I think after the Generations one did such a good job adapting all three of his modes, this one I absolutely believe they could do at Masterpiece level. You take that same exact style of engineering and you just amp up the detail and the complexity, and boom, you're going to have yourself a beautiful triple changer. Like, I don't have any doubt, you know, now that we've seen what that one could be. And then Springer made the list as well, because of course Springer made the list. And this starts into year 3 stuff that they had in there. And surprisingly, not a whole lot of Autobot representation, considering that's where Masterpiece has shown some year 3 love already. We have Hot Rod, Rodimus Prime, RC, and Ultra Magnus, but we don't really have, like, there's no Cup or Blur yet, and they were not on this list. So apparently, Springer's the higher priority. You know, and as triple changers go, because he's the more futuristic looking one, they can make allowances. They can make it a little bit easier. So like that one I could actually imagine. That one I can imagine Takara doing. But the fun names, the fun list, the fun trio, as far as the year 3 stuff goes, was Scourge, Cyclonus, and Galvatron. I am shocked we haven't seen a Galvatron yet, but I'm pretty much assuming it's because trying to get a screen-accurate cannon mode might be physically impossible. Because, like, even third-party toys I see struggle to figure out what to do with those big legs in cannon mode. It is a very difficult engineering nut to crack. Ironically, turning more into the shape of a nut while I talk about that. I do think it's inevitable. He's one of the lead villains of G1. You know, he's the villain of Season 3, the upgraded Megatron. I feel like that's inevitable. I feel like it's inevitable that we get a Galvatron. I just don't think it... Takara might have to be willing to make some sacrifices on that one to make sure that actually happens the way it should. And then we have... I'm going to backtrack a little bit because I feel like the Kingdom Cyclonus toy, I feel like is almost a perfect Cyclonus toy. I'm sure Masterpiece could improve upon it, but I'm hesitant to figure out how, other than just making him slimmer and more screen accurate in robot mode. But otherwise, it's such a good engineering. Like, I could imagine them just upgrading the Kingdom figure and making it Masterpiece style aesthetic, and it would still work. There is one weird name on the list, though, and it's because, remember, this was 2022, where the character didn't have as much prominence, and that was Elita 1. Now, don't get me wrong, I love when Elita is recognized. You know, she predates RC. She should be second in command behind Optimus Prime alone. And yet, she doesn't get a whole lot of representation, though we have amended this. IDW 1.0 showed off Elita with a very different take on her, admittedly, but she was around. People are aware of her. She's got potential appearances in the new comics because she's been seen on some covers. She has, obviously, her role in Earthspark. She's had better toys produced as of late. But the idea of getting a Masterpiece toy, considering we barely even see her vehicle mode in G1, is kind of interesting, if only because what her vehicle mode looks like right now is purely, at least 50% hypothetical, because we never actually saw the entire thing. I would actually love for Takara to give it a try just so we can see what it's actually going to look like. So, as far as the main list, that's where it goes. Those are all the main individual figures, but they also released a poll for Masterpiece Gatai. And There's only a few names on this list that are actually interesting. Everyone else is just kind of in the running or pretty obvious. Devastator, that's pretty obvious. So is the likes of Bruticus. So is the likes of Superion. And then Menasor is in the list as well. No Defensor, oddly enough, which probably boils down to he's the only Season 2 combiner that has no episode devoted to him. In fact, even Devastator, a Season 1 combiner, has a Season 2 episode devoted to him. Actually, yeah, like, and then like Defensor just kind of shows up. So he's the only one that really doesn't get explained or doesn't get any like decent screen time, which is a shame. Predaking was also on the list too, but again, we're talking like softball pitches. Like, these are no surprise that Takara would consider doing literally the first and most iconic of all combiners, as well as, all the, main combiners that everyone knows. It's the last three on the list that are more interesting and worth discussing. The first one's Volcanicus, which, keep in mind, Volcanicus only had one iteration at the time, and it was not the best received. I never liked how Power of the Primes Volcanicus turned out. I never liked the idea of combining Dinobots in the first place, but apparently Takara was willing to actually consider doing it at the Masterpiece level. Now, nowadays, we have a far better take on it with the core class Dinobots. I like that Volcanicus better. I still don't think Dinobots should combine, but at least it's some improvement. But it more or less leads me to believe, like, there's no way to do that in scale. They do scale Dinobots now to match everyone else. They'd be $250, $300 plus figures. To do that as a 5-part combiner, you're talking $1,500. Now, they're Dinobots, they'll sell, especially if you do one, every like 3-4 months and spread it out over like 3 years. But still, kind of crazy to think about. Masterpiece Volcanicus, when they can't seem to nail down a retail level Volcanicus. Again, core one's definitely better. JRX, otherwise known as Rail Racer. This is the only non-G1 character on either list. Randomly thrown in. Keep in mind, 2022. This was well before the HasLab has proven that there is absolute demand for robots in disguise designs. This was before we had a promise of a Sideburn toy coming out at retail, or, like the best. We had like Skybite in Cyberverse and like the Generations toy line, and that's pretty much it as far as RID representation, outside of the occasional Black Optimus. The idea that they would even think about it. Now keep in mind, this is in the list for the same reason that they're doing Trains, the Raiden team, as the original combiners for Masterpiece, because it hedges their bets. Train collectors will buy it because they are scaled to collectible train size. So they're going for cross appeal to make sure that this risky endeavor actually manages to make them money. So in that context, no surprise they would consider Rail Racer. It's a super random pick, but if you think about it, there's actual logic behind it. It would mean Masterpiece Gatai just became the train line, but funny name now that I think of it. But I know a lot of people who would love a full-size Rail Racer. And then we get to the other one that raises even more possibilities, and that was God Jinrai. The fact that they would consider him a Gatai release and not a main Masterpiece line release. Now, a Jinrai seems inevitable in Masterpiece because obviously, it's an Optimus Prime. It's Power Master Optimus Prime. They can absolutely sell it at Hasbro Pulse, sell it at Target, rebrand it as Power Master Optimus Prime Masterpiece Edition. All of that, and it would go over great. It would sell fine, and then the US don't even need God Bomber. Like, US would be like a Pulse exclusive. I don't think a retail store would dare take it in. But yeah, a Masterpiece Jinrai, absolutely, because it's a super big, super cool Optimus Prime. I would love to see that. I would absolutely love to see that. It's interesting they consider it a Gatai, because that means just about any of the combiner character, like two-piece combiners like that, would end up potentially in the Gatai line. You know, if they did a Star Saber 2.0, would he be in the Gatai line in preparation for a Victory Leo? Who knows? Maybe. You know, maybe Gatai just does a Victory Leo that combines with the old Star Saber you've been hanging on to for, what, a decade now? It's been a while. But that was the list. Like I said, interesting names. Interesting that so few of them have come to pass. The only one that has happened is the most obvious one. But apparently all of these are on the table and have been on the table for a year and a half. Now, a year and a half is enough time to get the results of this polls, develop a figure, and then promote it. Maybe not enough time to release it per se, but we should definitely know that these toys are on the way based on whatever results this poll gave Takara. So it's interesting that we haven't heard anything yet. But fingers crossed, there are promising Masterpiece announcements for the anniversary. Hopefully someone on this list will be there, because there are some really good options here. Let me know your favorite option in the comments below. What Masterpiece have you been waiting a long time for? Is it on the list or is it not? I'm kind of curious on this one. So that's it for me. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you next time.